everyone. It is my great pleasure to start this year off with someone who has a very impressive and long list of conservation titles and who is a total turtle addict. No wonder his third daughter's first word was turtle. Good afternoon, Dr. Nick Pilcher.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you, Julia?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good.
You've completely devoted your life to turtles. Can you remember your very first encounter with turtles and what made you fall in love with them?
Actually, I can. So let me tell you that when I started working with sea turtles, it was just a job. I just got, that's what somebody paid me to go and do. But one night I was working on a beach and a turtle was not laying eggs for some reason. She kept on moving and trying to dig a hole, but she couldn't lay eggs. And so I crawled up behind her and she had one back flipper, but the other back flipper was missing. And so every time she tried to dig to make a nest, the nest would collapse and all the sand would keep on falling in the hole. And I was young, I was 20 years old, and I didn't really know what to do. So I watched her dig down one time, and then I used my hand and I dug down and I became the second flipper. So she would dig down with her flipper and then I would dig down with my flipper, and then she would dig down and I would dig down. And 15, 20 minutes later, she laid eggs. She came back to nest a few times later that season. And every time she came on the beach, I was there waiting for her. And we laid eggs together. And she had a tag on her that was KSA 4811.
Oh, you even remember the tag.
Mm-hmm.
You are the founder and executive director at the nonprofit organization Marine Research Foundation, based here in Sabah. When and why did you decide to create this NGO?
So we set up MRF in 2003. And it came at a time where I had had a few jobs before, and all of my previous employers just didn't have the vision and the interests that I did. And I'm quite driven, and I like to do things my way. Yeah. And I figured that working for somebody else was never going to work. And so we set up MRF. And the nice thing about MRF is it allows me to pick projects that I believe in.
Yeah.
And because of that, I've been able to pretty much do anything I've wanted for the last nearly 20 years.
Oh, that's why everywhere I've read about you, it says that you absolutely love your job. And it's great because you get to do what you want to do. And that's very important.
Yep, that's exactly how it works.
Do you do any outreach work at MRF? Like conservation presentations or awareness presentations, or do you just focus on the scientific side and the research?
I will say we have much more of a focus on the science and the research, but that doesn't mean that we don't involve students and volunteers and interns in what we do. I'll give you one example. We run a project in Mantanani where we are looking at the long-term impacts of climate change on the sex ratio of sea turtles in the ocean. And this has been running since 2006. But every time we are up there, we collaborate with another NGO called Reef Check, and we take a couple of turtles to the beach, and they bring 30 or 40 of the school children from the island. And then we can explain about turtle biology, about why we're doing the work we're doing, about climate change, and then all those children participate in releasing those sea turtles. So that's one example of how we engage with the public in some of the work we do. Yeah. We give a number of public lectures. Over the last year, I've given several online, and prior to that, I've done them in person. So do my staff. They give lectures as well. So we do explain a lot about what we do. It's just that we don't work that closely with schools and things like that, like some other NGOs might.
What do you do once you have the data that you collect on these trips? How does it help you? Are you looking for certain patterns?
We have a project where we are putting time-lapse cameras on fishing boats.
Oh,
These cameras take a picture every 5 seconds,
yeah.
and they have a GPS linked to them. So we know exactly where each picture was taken.
Oh,
Remember that when a fishing boat goes out of the port, we don't know where they go fishing.
yeah.
We just know that they're somewhere out there, but we don't know exactly where. But now we have these cameras taking a picture of the deck. And if a turtle shows up on the deck, or if a big shark shows up on the deck, or a big stingray, we have a picture of it.
Oh,
And we have a time and a date and a location. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to say, have you noticed that we seem to catch a lot of hammerhead sharks in this one place? Right?
yeah.
And with that sort of information, we can go to the Department of Fisheries and say, look, if you want to protect hammerhead sharks, there's this little place here that if you could keep boats away from it during April to October, we would save most of the hammerhead sharks.
And the fishermen obviously know that the camera is on the
So
deck.
the fishermen are part of the project, and the reason they allow us to do it is because we've worked with them for many, many years. We have a lot of trust. And actually, when we present the data, we never present the data as pinpoints. We present it more as heat maps. Have you ever seen those maps where it's like dark red in the middle and then it
Yeah.
goes out to other colors, right? So we do it like that. And that way you don't actually, you can't tell whose boat is what. You
Yeah.
just know that that particular area is a hot spot for, say, hammerhead catches during certain months. So one of the challenges with managing fisheries is, well, you can't shut down the fishery. If not, we'd have no fish to eat.
Mhm.
But what you can do is you might be able to come up with something that's called a time area closure. And that means that for this area during these months, nobody fishes here. That means fishermen can continue to fish, but we can continue to save a species.
What are the pros and cons of using drones for your research?
The truth is drones are quite limiting. At the most, we can do maybe an hour's work before you have to spend a whole day recharging batteries. So that's one of the biggest limitations is the amount of time. Of course, the drone can tell us a lot more about where turtles are over that small area than we would ever be able to get with any other piece of equipment. So there's a lot of value in using a drone. But what we are trying to do is we're trying to build a drone that will fly for 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, you're
And
building drones as well.
oh yeah, so we like to play with toys. We're all grown up children. Um, we have our own 3D printer, and we use that to print parts. And we have a whole bunch of different aircraft in the office that we use that we've been building. And we're hoping to be able to get one of them to fly for about 3 hours and be able to go about 100 kilometers away from us.
I also read that you do aerial surveys for turtles in Palawan, Philippines, and use satellite transmitters to determine turtles' offshore migration routes.
Yep.
How does knowing the migration routes help you in your researches?
So imagine that we have turtles that lay eggs on a beach. They go back into the water, and you ask somebody, well, so where do they go? I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't know? No, I don't know. And the problem with that is, what happens if we protect them on the beach, but then they swim somewhere in the ocean where they're hunted?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That means that all of the protection efforts we do on a beach are basically wasted, because the minute they swim back home,
Yeah.
somebody's going to hunt them and eat them. So understanding the linkages between where turtles nest and where they go to feed is important, because we can then set up collaborative programs with the people in those countries. So understanding those differences, those linkages, is extremely important in designing effective conservation projects. Right? There's no point, like I said, there's no point spending thousands and thousands of ringgit protecting them on one side
Yeah.
if they're going to get hunted when they go home.
Do you have, since you have over 10 projects, do you have one that you specifically like or you think specifically succeeded in its overall goal? And what was that project?
I think I'm going to say there's two.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, so the first one is the Turtle Excluder Device project.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really, really keen on that project because it isn't a simple thing to change a government or to change the way fishermen approach what they do. And yet we've been able to do that. And we've been able to do it just amongst a handful of people. It didn't take a big NGO with 8,000 people on their staff to make a difference. And I'm a firm believer that small agencies are extremely powerful when they put their mind to it. So the Turtle Excluder Device project for me is I think one of my biggest projects and one that will leave behind a legacy that I'd be very proud of.
Yeah.
The other one, of course, is the Mantanani project. Now, the Mantanani project has its interest for a whole number of other reasons. To start with, it's fun. It's loads of fun. We're like little children. We drive around in a speedboat and we jump on turtles in the ocean and we laugh and we joke and it's like being a kid all over again, and I love doing that. So the Mantanani project is unique in that sense, but it's also unique in another, and that is that in order to determine the sex of the turtles, I have to do a little surgical procedure on them called laparoscopy. So I actually make an incision in the turtle and I put a scope inside and I take a look, and afterwards I sew her up and we put them back in the ocean. And there are probably less than 10 people in the world that do that. And so it's an extremely, extremely unique skill. It's an extremely powerful tool to tell us about the biology of sea turtles that otherwise we would never learn. And I can't stress just how much working in water with turtles is more valuable than working on a beach. Let me try and explain that very briefly. If you go on a beach and you see a turtle, I can guarantee she's going to be female and she will be an adult because she's there to lay eggs.
Yeah.
And males don't lay eggs. All right. So if you go onto a nesting beach, you only get to see one small little part of a big, very big life cycle. You see adult females, and 60 days later, you see little babies, and that's it. What happens in between in the 30 years while they are growing up, nobody knows. Imagine it as being a big, dark pipe, and you put little babies in at one end, and you hope that 30 years later, big adults will come out of the other end of the pipe. Yeah? But you don't know what's happening in between. So if no adults come out at the other end, what was the problem?
You don't know.
I don't know. Was it little babies that got eaten by sharks? Was it juveniles that got taken by fisheries? Was it subadults that got hunted on their feeding grounds to feed people? We don't know. But by using laparoscopy on a feeding ground where we see all different sizes of turtles, we can actually tell you, look, there's plenty of little juveniles arriving. Yep, juveniles are growing into subadults very healthily. Okay, the problem doesn't lie here. So if we're losing adults, it's probably towards the end of the pipeline, right? When you go to a nesting beach, all you do is hope that some animal made it through 30 years of a growing up.
Yeah.
Whereas with an in-water research program, you get to see all of the different life stages.
Yeah.
And you get to see males and females. And we tag the turtles and we see them multiple times over multiple years. And do you know how rewarding it is to tag a juvenile turtle and to see that turtle 4 years later become a subadult?
Yeah.
Right? It's like you're watching your kids grow up. And they're my kids. And so that's one of the most rewarding projects I run.
What is the biggest threat that turtles face, in your opinion?
If you want to know the biggest threat to sea turtles across the entire planet, it is bycatch in fisheries.
Oh, yeah.
That is the #1 threat to all different turtle species across the entire range across the planet, right? And bycatch doesn't only happen in big fishing boats. It happens in little baby coastal fishing villages. Everybody who puts out a net will catch a sea turtle at some point or another. Yeah, so the entire east coast of Peninsular Malaysia is completely TED compliant.
Oh,
And we estimate that that is saving around 1,000 sea turtles per year, just by having those boats certified and towing TEDs, right? So we are now focusing a lot of our energy on Sabah and working very closely with the Sabah Department of Fisheries. We run awareness workshops and demonstration trials all across Sabah, in Tawau, in Semporna, in Beluran, Sandakan, Kudat, KK, you name it. Our teams travel there. We work with fishermen. We go on their boats. We help sew their nets. We're basically fishermen. We come home all stinky, and we have net sewing equipment in our pockets and in our back pockets and lying in the back of the car. And yeah, we basically had to become fishermen in order to work with the fishermen and gain their trust. We have to be very aware of the livelihoods of these fishermen. We don't want them to lose money. And now, with the COVID pandemic and all of the other problems, I don't think it's the right time to be talking to them about saving sea turtles.
yeah.
I think now is the right time to be talking to them about how do we help them, how do we help their communities, what sort of assistance do they need. And when everybody's slowly getting back into normal routines, then we can put a bit more worry into turtles. So people will only really be concerned about conservation when they are guaranteed that they have a roof over their heads, food on the table, clean water to drink, things like that. Those are important human necessities. And I would never do anything that I do at the expense of any one of those things with the communities I work with.
Yeah. What message would you give to people to help them understand the importance of turtles and what they should change in their daily lives to help?
That's a really tricky question. Put me on the spot. My goodness.
I'm
So,
sorry.
look, turtles are important for many reasons. To me, they're important because I became attached to them many years ago. Um, they're important because I can see the values that they have to people. Um, to some communities in the world, they're sacred. To others, they are food.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't discount the fact that people have relied on sea turtles as a form of sustenance for many years. But they also play many valuable ecological roles in the ocean. And these roles are roles that are probably not well understood. And so people might not really associate why is a turtle important. But I'll give you one very quick example. And you know that when people have a grass garden, you have to cut that grass quite often.
Yeah.
Because if you don't cut it, it all goes brown and yellowy and it's not really healthy. But you know, when you cut the grass, it's really healthy and vibrant and green. Well, the same happens with seagrass underwater. And green sea turtles feed on seagrass, and they are basically like underwater lawnmowers. And they go along maintaining these habitats and keeping them really healthy. But guess what? These habitats are also places where baby fish and shrimp grow up. And without having healthy seagrass habitats, we would not have healthy fisheries.
Yeah.
And we would not be able to have seafood dinners and shrimp dinners and things like that if we had unhealthy marine habitats. So sea turtles are only one of the species that help maintain these habitats, but they are a very important one. That's just one example, but it should at least give you an idea that while they're underwater and we think they're just swimming around
Yeah.
high-fiving each other, they're actually playing really, really important ecological roles. So if there was one thing I think people can do across the planet to help not just sea turtles, but to help marine environments in general, is just to be less materialistic, to not need so much stuff.
Question for you from Mr. Bob Hartley, who is asking if you would like to expand your areas of research within Sabah, and if so, where?
So the answer is yes. I've been focusing on this site on Mantanani, but the truth is it's a very small area, and I don't learn everything I need to learn about turtles there. I'd like to try and expand into further north, sort of the Kudat, Bangi, Balambangan side of things. There's a lot of sea turtle habitats up there. I'd like to start with some quite extensive aerial surveys so I can get my head around what the habitats look like and where I need to be. But there are turtles there, and I have a feeling that many of them might be my turtles.
What do you hope to achieve with MRF?
To make a difference. And when I say that, what I mean is that there is no point investing conservation funding into something that will just come to a dead end. Right? So whatever projects we run have to be projects that leave a legacy behind. I'll give you one example. Our flagship project here in Malaysia is working with the Department of Fisheries to install turtle excluder devices in shrimp trawls. Yeah. Right? So shrimp trawls are responsible for the majority of sea turtle mortality in the ocean. Oh. Probably more than 90% of mortality for turtles comes from shrimp trawling. Oh, wow. But there is a very simple solution. In the back of the net, we put a metal grid, and fish and shrimp can still go through the grid and end up in the net, but something big like a turtle will hit it and go out through a flap. So we started this project back in 2007, and in 2017, the Malaysia government made it a legal requirement. We have been appointed as technical advisors to the Department of Fisheries. Now you think about how that's changed and turned around. It used to be my project, yeah. But now it's a government project that I advise on, which means that when I am done and move on and choose to do something different, yeah. That project still continues. That's what I mean by leaving a legacy behind. I want I want the projects that we do to cause change to happen. If that means creating new regulations or setting up a new protected area or changing the way we fish, if any of those things happen because of the work we do, then I know that's why I do what I do.
Well, that concludes this amazing interview. Dr. Pilcher, thank you so much for joining me today. I admire your work very much and everything that you do for the marine world and turtles.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for your time as well. Well done for everything you've done.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching. Special mention to Will and Ocean, my two adopted turtles from Mabel. I definitely encourage you to go and adopt your very own turtle anywhere you can. The money always helps them. See you very soon. Bye.